Antonio Navarro, billionaire and CEO of one of the country's largest technology companies, was accustomed to being the center of attention. His world revolved around executive meetings, gala dinners and lavish events, but he felt empty. The loneliness of his position at the top tormented him. Even surrounded by wealth, he felt the absence of something genuine, something money could never buy: love. Life for him seemed like a constant game of facades and appearances, and he no longer knew what it truly meant to connect with someone in a genuine way. It was during a charity event held at his mansion that he first saw her. Julia, a simple and reserved young woman, was one of the housekeepers. She was in charge of serving the guests, but her gaze, fixed on the floor, revealed something different. She wasn't the typical submissive woman he was used to seeing among the staff, but someone with a profound calm, as if her presence in that wealthy environment were merely a facade, a mask. Their encounter was brief. Antonio, impressed by the way she moved with elegance and discretion, observed her more closely. The other employees were busy, but she always seemed to be the last to leave the room. Something in her posture caught his attention, something he couldn't quite place. The fact that she wasn't a woman who took advantage of her billionaire status intrigued him. "Fact, you have something different about you." "He commented casually as she passed his desk. She looked at him surprised. "Oh, excuse me, sir. It's nothing. Just an impression," he said, smiling slightly. But what he didn't know was that by making that comment, he was beginning a connection that would change his life forever. Julia, on the other hand, knew perfectly well what she was doing there. She wasn't simply fulfilling her role as an employee. Her plan was underway. What Antonio didn't know was that she wasn't there to serve him, but to destroy him. She had a secret mission. Ever since her family had been harmed by large corporations and the business elite, Julia had hatched a plan to infiltrate the lives of the most powerful men in the country and destroy their fortunes. Antonio was her current target, but what she didn't anticipate was the unexpected attraction she began to feel for him. The first glance was fleeting, but over time, she found herself growing closer to him. His smile, his kindness, and especially his vulnerability were aspects that made her question his intentions. She knew her plan had to continue, but the truth was, increasingly, she began to wonder if destroying Antonio Navarro would, in fact, be the victory she imagined. As the days passed, Antonio's presence in her life became a constant. Julia began to approach him in a more calculated manner. She watched him as he worked in his office, unnoticed, and began to understand his routines. He trusted her, or rather she made him believe he could trust her. Every casual conversation of being left alone with no one to truly love him. Julia, upon hearing this, was touched in a way she hadn't anticipated. She knew everything he feared was real. But on the other hand, she also knew he was on the brink of collapse. What should she do? Become the woman he believed herself to be, or go along with the plan to destroy him and avenge the pain the elite had inflicted on her family? During one of the most intense moments of their relationship, Antonio invited her on a business trip. What she didn't know was that this trip would be key to completing her plan. But upon arriving, Julia found herself confronted with a painful truth. As she considered her options for overthrowing Antonio, something inside her seemed to scream at her to give up. Julia's inner dilemma grew. She began to doubt her own intentions. Her mission seemed increasingly distant, more impersonal. But the weight of what she had promised herself, revenge for the pain of the past, drove her forward. She knew what she had to do, but she no longer knew if she could bear the consequences. The weight of the decision was becoming unbearable. Julia tried to stay away, but with every gesture from Antonio, every kind word, she found herself drawn deeper into it. She could no longer ignore what was happening to her heart. Every smile, every look, seemed to make her question the plan she had so coldly devised. But she couldn't give in. She couldn't fail in her mission. She knew what motivated her. She knew what had happened to her family and so many others, but now she wondered if she could truly destroy Antonio's life. She needed to act, but how could she do it now? The pressure was intense, and the thought of losing control over her feelings seemed increasingly real. But when she looked at Antonio, she thought, I can still do this. I'm stronger than him. He can't control me. Antonio, for his part, was completely invested. He began constantly seeking out Julia, eager to spend more time with her. He knew nothing, but their bond was growing stronger every day. To him, she was no longer just a maid, but someone he could trust. He felt more human around her. She made him laugh. She made him feel less isolated, less like a lonely man surrounded by self-interested people. Antonio was beginning to think that maybe he had found something real. Julia knew then that the time to act was near. She had let her heart take over, and now she felt that when the truth was revealed, everything she had built would crumble. Julia couldn't sleep anymore. At night, the weight of her decision kept her awake, sleepless, reliving the last few weeks with Antonio in her mind. Every conversation, every shared laugh, every moment of complicity she'd shared with him now seemed to be turning into something much bigger than she'd ever imagined. She hadn't planned on falling in love, but what do you do when love starts to appear so unexpectedly? Antonio, for his part, was completely absorbed in his relationship. With Julia, he allowed himself to trust her completely, something he rarely did with anyone. She seemed the only person capable of offering him something genuine amidst his life of falsehood and superficiality. He thought of her even during business meetings, in the moments he sat alone in his office. To him, she was more than an employee. She had become a friend, a confidant. He couldn't understand it, but with her, he felt it was possible to simply be Antonio, the man, and not just the billionaire CEO. But Julia was aware of the fine line she was walking. Antonio's plan of destruction was still in place, and she couldn't get too involved. She knew that if love began to gain traction, it would be harder to complete what she had started. She felt as if she were playing a dangerous game, where any wrong move could mean her defeat. And despite all her feelings for him, her mission was clear. Her family, the injustices she had witnessed in her childhood, and her desire for revenge were greater than anything else, or at least she tried to believe so. That day, Antonio invited her for a walk around the city. It was a simple invitation, but for Julia it was another step toward the abyss. She knew that what was happening between them was not just a friendship or a superficial relationship, but at the same time, she refused to give in completely to what her heart was feeling. She had to resist, she had to stay true to her purpose. As they walked through the busy city streets, Antonio talked about his childhood, about the burden of being an only child and carrying on his family name. Julia listened intently, trying to understand every word, but doubt began to grow within her. When he spoke of his fears, his insecurities, and the loneliness he felt, something in her heart seemed to waver. How could she destroy a man who trusted her, who saw her as his only ally in the world? She felt the weight of this responsibility, as if she were on the brink of an irreversible fall. Julia, I never imagined I could trust someone like this, Antonio said, his eyes fixed on hers. You've been my rock, my confidant. I don't know what I would do without you. His words were like a knife to her chest. Her stomach churned. The lie she was living seemed to have grown bigger than herself. She was about to destroy the only person who treated her with dignity, someone who made her feel human again, far from being a pawn in a power struggle. Oh, well, I do not know what to do with all this. Antonio, oh, she replied, her voice trembling. I do not know what I am becoming. He looked at her with a confused expression. What do you mean by that? Oh, she hesitated for a moment, fighting the urge to confess everything. But instead she simply said, Oh, I do not want to hurt you. I do not want to lose you. I do not know what happened to me. But you made me see the world differently, and that scares me, Ajiro. Those moments of vulnerability she shared with him were beginning to have an irreversible effect on her, but she still knew what she had to do. The plan was still in motion. She just needed more time, more information. And then, the moment to act would come. Yet by the end of the day, she felt increasingly torn. Julia's dilemma was becoming unbearable. Each day spent with Antonio seemed to wear down her resolve, sapping her strength. She knew she was falling in love with him, but that couldn't be enough to change her mind. Her mission was bigger than herself, bigger than her feelings. And yet, seeing him once more, her heart pounded. He trusted her in a way she knew was hard to earn, but at the same time, she knew that this trust would be the key to her downfall. The revelation came sooner than she expected. Antonio had invited her to a private meeting, something rare for him. He seemed more tense than usual, more withdrawn, as if something was happening that he didn't know how to handle. She entered his office, and the door closed behind her with a heavy sound. He was sitting behind his desk, staring at his papers, but his eyes were distant. "Hi, Julia, we need to talk." "Careful," he said without looking up. "So something happened with the company. Something isn't right. I trust you and I need your help. You're the only person I can trust right now." "Oh." His tone sent a chill down her spine. He'd never spoken so sincerely. The fact that he was there asking for her help made her question everything she'd planned. It was as if the universe was trying to tell her there was something greater than revenge, something she'd never considered. The way he viewed her with complete trust seemed to crumble every defense she'd built. For Antonio Hiru, she stopped, words failing her. "Why dono? To know if I can help you. Us? Not who you think I am." "Oh," he finally looked up, shock written all over his face. "Thase, what are you talking about, Julia? I trust you." Oh, she took a deep breath, the tension in her body becoming almost unbearable. This was the decisive moment. She would have to tell everything or go through with the plan. "Kalekavtu, I'm here to destroy you. she said, breathless. The words came out as a whisper, but the pain was immense. I'm a lie, Antonio. I wanted to bring you down, but now I don't know anymore, Dax. The silence that followed was deafening. Antonio stood there, his eyes fixed on her in disbelief. He looked as if he'd been struck by a mortal blow. What are you saying? How could you? She looked at him, tears in her eyes. I didn't. Te want to fall in love. I didn't for te want to, but I do for te were. Lost Antonio, I cannot. Te go on like this anymore, or... The truth was out in the open, and in that moment, Julia knew her life would never be the same again.